Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Ryan Heath, Senior Editor, Politico, and Juan Flores, Senior Vice President, Technology Management and Operations, AT&T.
Welcome to this next conversation. My new friend JC from AT&T and I, we're going to talk about transatlantic digital cooperation. Cooperation means different things to different people. If I talk to the US government, they'll tell me it's about democracies working together to contain China. The EU will say, no, we need to regulate big tech. We've got to come up with compromise regulations. What does it mean to AT&T?
Well, first, let me thank Nick Logothetis and Matthew Swift for having us here today. AT&T's been a proud partner of Concordia since 2018, and so providing this platform for all of us to get together and to talk about issues of the day are really, really important. And so what does sort of the 21st century digital rules of the road mean to AT&T? Well, they mean a lot of things. They mean, in terms of competition policy, right? Extremely important. Consumer protection policy, privacy policy, cybersecurity policy, and even supply chain. All those things matter to us, our customers, our ability to provide our network, but more so sort of the level playing field and the rules of the road that are transferable across the globe, right? And this is kind of where the conversations between governments are really important, because it's that rules of the road that are scalable, that allow us to really be competitive in a marketplace.
And we're starting to see more of those conversations. They've always existed at some level. The regulators will catch up once or twice a year at a conference in Washington or New York or something like that. But now they're formalizing it into a trade and tech council. It'll meet in Pittsburgh on September 29. Do you bring expectations as a company to that, or are you more like taking a wait and see approach and letting them figure out how they're going to talk to each other, and then you'll come in with viewpoints?
Well, to begin with, we look at it as a positive step forward, right? Because if we're looking at this from democracies coming together to talk about what the rules of the road will be, this is a great first step, right? And so from that perspective, it is a wait and see approach, but it also is a positive view in terms of where this can head. I think if you've seen the progress of the digital world, and particularly through COVID, has really made it demonstrably more important that we really do get this right. Again, this conversation that's going to take place in Pittsburgh for us is a positive step forward in getting towards more scalable rules, more common understanding, right? So from that perspective, it is wait and see. Let's see what comes out of it. But it is very positive that the EU and the US are combining and talking about these very, very important issues.
Yeah. Now, we've seen in the course of the pandemic that it's been a huge market opportunity that has been capitalized on by a lot of tech companies. And in the past, there was this divide between telcos, which AT&T would have said it was, tech companies, which is how people would have identified with, on the West Coast, the newer sort of companies. Do you feel there's like a merging and a blurring of all of those categories now? Like, is AT&T a tech company now?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're a media provider as well, right? I mean, it's kind of all of the above. But I think there's a few ways to look at this. More so as you're getting into the world of 5G, right? And what our core mission is, our core as a company is going to be going forward, is our ability to provide broadband, right? And that ability to provide broadband is not your just traditional fiber wire connected to a premises. It is the ability to provide that gigabit speed with high ability to transfer data any which way possible, right? So that's wireless, through fiber, et cetera. That is going to be instrumental in terms of the next generation of where digital technology is going to take us. And we don't even know where that is yet as we start thinking about things like AI and all that. So as we get into the blurring of things, I think the blurring of things is more of making sure that certain gatekeepers are not in a position where they are diminishing innovation, especially as we're getting into 5G and the future of what that holds. And so going back to kind of the rules of the road, right, and in that all things can't be sort of focused around a particular set of companies. It needs to be a sort of broader lens.
And where would you, thinking from the domestic perspective, where would you love to see that drive for change coming from? Does it come from the Federal Trade Commission? Do you trust Congress to come up with some of those rules of the road? Or do we have to copy the Europeans at some level because they got some of these laws on the books already?
Look, it could be an all of the above approach, right? I'm not going to pretend to think how it'll play out, but I am encouraged that the conversations are happening everywhere because there is now a realization that this conversation does need to happen. And so from that perspective, that's a very, very positive step forward. In terms of what kinds of legislation or action needed, you know, in the US, we need a national privacy law, right? I mean, we've essentially deferred the states to making some of these decisions, and as we know, the internet doesn't work in a compartmentalized way. It is a true free flow, right, across borders. And from a U.S. perspective, if we're going to continue to lead on technology, we're going to need a national privacy law, right? I mean, that's going to be extremely, extremely important. And then all the other reviews that are happening right now at the FTC level, along what's going on in Europe and in the United Kingdom, those are positive conversations. Those are conversations that really, really need to be had.
And how pragmatic do you feel you're willing to be at AT&T, and do you feel that your competitors have a matching pragmatism when it comes to those questions? And the reason I ask is I've been on the inside of the process. I used to work for the European Union many years ago, and I watched some of those big tech companies. You know, they said, okay, yes, we need regulation. Make sure it's light touch. Then you get an actual draft bill, and they don't like the details of the draft bill. So they love the theory and the principle of the regulation, and then they hate the imperfect reality of it. And we know how clogged up Congress gets. So it's a rare bill that actually gets out the other end of the sausage-making machine. Are you willing to sort of play ball and be pragmatic in that process to say, okay, some national privacy bill is better than none, even if it's not the exact one that we want?
Yeah, I mean, you can't, right? Good can't get in, or perfect can't get in the way of good, right? I mean, that's extremely right when you're talking about a situation like this, and having a robust debate about the applicability of the laws and what new needs to be contemplated, it is going to be a strong and fierce debate, as it should be, because that's how you get to good decision-making process. If we're going to avoid, right, having the debates, if we're going to avoid, you know, the uncomfortable questions, then we're never going to get to the stretch of this. And so much for the U.S. and the EU and most of the Western world, you know, to get in to become or to stay sort of the leader in digital technology, we're going to need to have these debates, and we're going to need to get to a conclusion to them. But you can't get to the conclusion without the tough questions, and that's what's happening right now.
Now, you were speaking about 5G earlier. You know, that's kind of the backbone of a lot of what we're going to experience in the technology world, or we are starting to experience. Is there any other element of this technological revolution that you think the audience really needs to be aware of or focus on? You know, AI, whatever it might be. What's the one thing people have to go and read up on when they leave here?
Yeah, so what I would say about 5G is we know it's really fast. We know it has the ability to transfer large amounts of data, which really ultimately the game changer in that is that it provides the edge of the network to be just as strong and just as robust as the core of the network. Essentially, there is no core anymore. The entire network is the core. I mean, that's where you start getting into things like driverless vehicles and all that. And all that, again, has to do with the latency 5G provides, meaning the speed in which decisions are made in the network. All that to say, what does 5G bring us? We don't know yet, right? I mean, this is the really cool part about this. We know it's going to have a transformative change to things like AI. We know it's going to have transformative changes to things like even in the medical field and things like that. But when we first thought about the cell phone, when Apple came out with its iPhone, right, and had the ability to do essentially compact all these things that you had on your desk into a phone. You now have a flashlight, a measuring stick. You were able to do all these different things at your fingertips. It's going to take it to another level. And all these things we've seen today, ride-based apps, all these sort of new things that we never would have contemplated when that first iPhone came out, is literally going to be the same thing with 5G. There's just going to be so much transformative change in so many industries. It's going to be extremely disruptive. And so I can't really predict what it'll all mean, but it is going to mean that you're going to have a smarter edge of the network, which is going to really change dramatically the way services are provided and the way decisions are made from companies and individuals.
Speaking of disruption, the other theme that we read a lot about now, even if we're only peripherally aware of tech debates, is security and the increasing ways and scale that cyber attacks take place. Like, it is literally now something that the UN Security Council talks about, and they never would have been talking about it that 5 or 10 years ago. So where are we in that sort of getting prepared for these cyber threats, and can we ever keep pace with the evolving nature of the threats? Because it feels like they continue to grow, and that you're bombarded. That as an individual, how do you ever keep up with something like that?
Yeah, well, look, at AT&T, we take cyber threats, cybersecurity, supply chain security extremely seriously, and it is part of our core mission in protecting our customers and protecting our network. And we really do think of ourselves as a thought leader in these practices, and a strong advocate that we need to have, strong standards, and we need to abide by those. And governments around the world, again, need to have this conversation and educate themselves more about what truly is, the importance of cybersecurity. And other companies, need to also pay attention to what their standards and operating procedures are.
At some level, that's a competitive advantage if you are investing more in security.
That's correct. And so, from that perspective, this is sort of the conversation of today when it comes to network security and supply chain security. And for us, it's extremely critical that we all get this right.
Now, we'll switch it up. We're coming to a close of the chat. The pandemic has affected us all in myriad ways, so maybe let's deal with power of positive thinking. What is something you're grateful for from the pandemic? What have you learned about doing your job differently, or sort of operating as a company differently, where you just think, I'm grateful that this happened?
Well, there's two things. At AT&T, we've initiated our internal employee efforts over the years under the banner of AT&T Believes, where we've localized our effort in supporting the local communities we reside in. That you would have thought that during a pandemic would have stopped, that employees would have said, how am I going to help if I'm stuck in my house? How are we going to do sort of the group projects we used to get together and do? The amazing part is, around the globe, where we have our AT&T campaign efforts, we've continued. Our employees have, because they're the ones who manage this, they're the ones who push this forward, through virtual Zooms, right? WebEx, whatever you want to call it, Teams, they've managed upon themselves to continue the work of all the non-for-profit organizations that we help in these communities. And so instead of meeting in conference rooms, they send, the invite, right, online. And they've continued to put our efforts in the Believes campaign in helping the local communities that we feel strongly that we need to help, especially in the communities where we have, representative
I love this idea. I was talking to the Salesforce president, Amy Weaver, the other day, and she just said there's no corporation and community anymore. Like, there's no boundary between the two. They've entirely become merged. You need it to keep your staff motivated. Companies feel they have more of a responsibility, or they articulate the responsibility more than they used to. Does it feel the same way for you inside AT&T?
It does. I mean, I feel like it's interesting. You know, you do want to get back to meeting people face to face. That part is extremely crucial, but almost this level of coordination to stay, you know, at the same game that you were prior to the pandemic with your employees has really forced us to be more efficient and more smart about how we utilize our time, right? And even coming out of the pandemic, this whole interaction where we still have the abilities to meet through video, I mean, I think that's going to continue some way, right? Where before it was just completely ignored. And I think that
grew.
Yeah, it's really served to actually meet more people around the company. I mean, that's the one thing I've seen that's been a huge change. Instead of people being stuck in kind of my silo, this has really opened up a lot more individuals to talk to each other more often. So
Awesome.
it's
Well, thank you for opening thank you for opening up to us today.
Absolutely. Thanks.
That's all we got time for, and it's now time for the next session. Thank you, JC.
Thank you.